right, folks, welcome into a very special episode of I've Got a Theory. Henish. I've got two special guests on today. Jessie Wright with Real Producers Magazine. Hey, Jessie. And Mr. Schuyler Hoffman, attorney with Hoffman and Ford, a real estate law here in San Diego. So thank you for joining me, guys. How are you guys doing today?
Awesome.
Okay, cool.
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Jessie was intended to be here in studio / my office, but life happens. So we're here now, and we got a compelling thing to talk about because today I've got a theory, and I wanted to chat with you guys about it. And my theory is that we disclose in real estate whether someone has passed away in the property within the past 3 years. And a lot of times people want to know what was the cause. Was it natural? Was it something sketchy like a suicide or a homicide? But they never ask, is the house haunted, or is there ghosts, or are there demons, or even potentially vampires? Because I'm looking it up. 13% of Americans believe vampires exist. So my theory is that ghosts should be disclosed in a real estate transaction in some form or another. And that's what I'm going with. So guys, let me ask you personally, do you believe in ghosts?
Go ahead, Sky.
Yeah, I'm going to plead the fifth on that one, Henish.
Okay.
Okay, well then I'll go because I totally think that there's ghosts. 100%. My mom said she used to see them all the time. Now, I don't see them. I don't really feel them. I'm also like doing my best to be more in tune and in touch with like that like different level of our energetic sphere that we all live in, right? So maybe I could tap into some ghosts and goblins and vampires. I would love to see a vampire. I'd love to be a vampire for like 2 days and then, back to real life. But that's just me.
I think it's a little bit more permanent than that, Jess.
It is. If I could have it my way, though, I would definitely be a vampire for just 2 days and then maybe a week tops. And then I would go back to normal.
You need the cure, right?
And Henish, this is what I'll tell you. My response is, I believe that there are people that believe that there are ghosts.
That's my response exactly. And so I'm with you on that. So the next question is, what percentage of Americans do you believe in ghosts?
Oh, I don't know. Probably 70%.
You said that 13% believe in vampires.
Correct.
Right? I'm going to go ahead and use your analogy against you and say 13%.
So YouGov did a study last year of 1,300 Americans. It's really pretty detailed, proper methodology and stuff like that. And they found that 45% of Americans believe that ghosts exist. And now, interestingly, because it's a YouGov study, they broke it down by Republican versus Democrats. Guess who believes in ghosts more likely?
Oh, I'm not touching that one.
Okay, got it. Okay, we got a couple fifths on here. So interesting. Republicans, 54% of them believe in demons, and only 37% of Democrats believe in demons. When it comes to ghosts, the delta is a little closer. It's 46% of Republicans and 41% of Democrats.
Yeah. I said 50-50 first, didn't I?
Yeah,
I said 50. I said 75%. Like, yeah.
But here's what I would say. I would bet that 90+% of people, whether they believe in ghosts or not, would not buy a house if they knew it was haunted. True or false?
What percentage?
I would say well over 90% of people would not buy a house if they found out that it had a history of being haunted.
Yeah. 90 sounds a little high, but 80%. Because if you know it's haunted, that's a big risk, because that's a big investment for you to get demons walking around and messing with you all night long.
If you know it's haunted. Okay, Henish, anybody who's willing to give you a significant discount on a house that's haunted, call me, okay? I'll just have it remodeled, all right?
So, I mentioned to Sky, who obviously, is a lawyer, knows what he's doing, an old case from 1991 called Stambowski versus Ackley, where Ackley was trying to was selling a house in upstate New York, and it was reported to have been haunted. 1890s Victorian mansion in upstate New York. And the buyer was Stambowski, who was from New York City, wanted a place in upstate to get away or whatever, and deposited $32,000 towards a $650,000 purchase of this house. Later found out in escrow that it was haunted, and it was published in Reader's Digest and in a bunch of local newspapers. And the seller nor the realtors had disclosed that. So he didn't want to buy the house anymore after he found out. He lost his earnest money, right? He lost his deposit. He's appealed it. And then during that, the case got a lot of notoriety and it got a bunch of buyers that did want to buy a haunted house.
Exactly. I mean, and it's like I said in my email yesterday, Henish, look at there is an appeal to the Hotel del Coronado, right? Everybody wants to know the story about the haunted room. And a lot of people line up to actually wait and rent that particular room.
Do you know anyone that's seen the ghost of Hotel del Coronado?
That's seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going there either, dude.
Okay, so bizarrely, so let me tell you a couple of my ghost stories, and since we got a couple minutes here, the Hotel del Coronado, and I'm a very science-based, fact-based. I've been in the creepiest places in the world. I've been in the death halls of abandoned hospitals, weird caves, old-ass buildings. I've never had ghost experience, right? Never had one in person. I've never experienced it. In the Hotel del Coronado last year for our anniversary, me and my wife went and stayed there because we got married behind it years ago. And we were hanging out at the bar that's close to the pool and the outside there. And there was a bunch of people coming in and out. And then right then, coming in really close to us, was a woman in all black Victorian dress holding a black parasol with a veil in front of her face. I was like, well, that's some bizarre outfit to wear in sunny San Diego when the rest of us are in tank tops and shorts. And so I was like, is anyone else looking at this person just walking through here? Like, it's not getting any attention when she should be getting a lot of attention for just walking through like this. And I didn't know about the hotel ghost up until then. I wasn't aware of it. So I Googled it up. I was like, is there some kind of ghost or, what's this history of this? And sure enough, it was a picture of the same woman that you found that was like, what was the story? She was like murdered there or found dead, 100 years ago. And it was a picture of the same woman in all black Victorian garb. And I was like, maybe it was an actor, that the hotel has come through, but it was as plain as day within 10 feet of me, two arms.
Did your wife see her?
We both saw it. We were like, we should go turn around and follow and see what's happened with this. By then she was gone. And I was like, that was a bizarre thing.
Way.
And so we researched it while we were staying there, that there was that ghost, and it was actually down the hall from where we were staying. It wasn't our exact room, but it was down the hall. And I don't know, nothing happened, but except we just saw it. And then the second quick ghost story is my wife's dog, while we were dating, saw a ghost in a house we were at. And it was the bizarrest thing because it was a house while we were rehabbing it. The guys were complaining that every night they were hearing moaning and coughing coming from the house. And so the first guy, we had to pay him to stay there because it was one of the houses in a bad neighborhood and we didn't want material stolen. So he's like, I'm not staying here anymore. This is creepy. He didn't know anything about it, right? Second guy's like, I'm not scared of ghosts. He's like, yeah, I hear it, but they're not bothering me, so I'll just deal with it. And so he just dealt with it, right? House gets done, construction's done. Me and my wife, a girlfriend at the time, and her dog stop by. The dog goes to the back room, empty house, clean, midday, staring at a corner, growling, ears back, tail down, growling and snarling at nothing in the corner. And I was like, my wife's like, that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. What is this dog doing? I was like, I have no idea. The dog's a little kooky. Maybe something's up. I was like, wait a second. I had remembered that a couple months prior, this was the house that those guys were complaining there was ghosts in. And I checked the records, and on the disclosure, the prior owners had died in the house from emphysema. Both of them. Husband and wife, old couple.
Coughing.
And no one knew that. No one would have known that.
So obviously you disclosed that on your TDS and your SPQ, right?
What would you disclose?
I just hope the statute of limitations is run. Okay.
But that's the question is what would you disclose? So probably, where I was getting with this is that I recently bought a house and it's now in escrow. And the prior owner had passed away peacefully, is what they said. They said, she was an elderly woman. She didn't want to die in the hospital, so she asked to be brought home and pass away in her home that she'd owned for years. Seems reasonable. None of the construction guys have complained of any ghosts. But I was tempted, just for partly fun and partly curiosity, to bring like a spirit medium out there to see if she could sense the ghost of this person. I wasn't going to give her any information. There's no backstory involved. I want to see if she can suss this out. And then I was tempted. I was like, well, now do I have a disclosure issue? Because what if she finds a ghost? Do I have to disclose it?
Yes.
And then secondly, how do we know that that ghost is associated with the house? What if it's just associated with the spirit medium and a ghost just hangs out with her? Or, like you don't know the source of it, right? If you have a furnace problem, it's the house that has a furnace problem. But if you have a ghost problem, how do I know it's the house or it's the person that's detecting it? You can't pinpoint that.
Well, Henish, here's really my big problem from a legal standpoint. How do we establish cost of repair?
So apparently everyone says do some sage, bring in a holy person, say some special words, and apparently that works because I right before this call, my home inspector, who doesn't believe in ghosts either, was like, dude, call up XYZ realtor. I inspected his house and he had ghosts. So I called up that realtor because he's a friend of mine too. He's like, man, I tell you, there was some weird stuff going on. And I mentioned that. I was like, hey, how do you know it's not he's like, but now I just accept it. He's like, because every house I met, I have these similar problems with, like, I was like, he told me about a book coming off the shelf of a bookshelf of 25, and one book came, and it was some special writer's book. And he's like, it wasn't just fall, it like slammed on the ground to the point where I thought like the UPS man had thrown a package. And he's like, he had similar things where his son was talking to people when they were a baby and would be talking to something that he didn't see, all kinds of weird stuff. And then he's like, I've had it in every house. I was like, okay, so this is a prime example. Maybe that ghost is following you around. Maybe it's not the house that's haunted. He's like, oh, I never thought of that. Maybe it is some kind of past relative of mine that's just hanging out with us because they're not causing any problems.
But it could also be that the ghost is following them, right? Or, you know what? Never mind. I'm not even going to say it. I'm going to plead the fifth, like you just said. Never mind.
So,
continue.
These arguments get
good advice.
Yeah, but that's what we're talking about because this is such ambiguous territory. So if I get that spirit medium out there, could she disclose, no, there's no ghosts? Yes, there is a ghost and she's friendly, or yes, there is a ghost and it's creepy. Or fourth is, yes, there's a vampire here. I don't know.
Again, I still think that you're right. Going back to your percentage with the 90%, I think that 90% would still buy the house if they knew that if they did disclose that there was a ghost there. And I think they would. I think I'm a risky person. I think I'd go for it.
And especially if I could disclose that it was a friendly ghost, like Casper or something like that.
But I'm also like, I bet that you could figure out how to get him to leave. Or you could just coexist, like you said. And maybe that's what I was going to say. Maybe that guy, your realtor who's getting every house that he's been in, he's had weird stuff happen. Maybe it's that he's been able, again, I think it depends on your personality, maybe a little bit. If you can, not your personality, but like your chemical makeup, if you can like bridge that gap, like a spirit medium, like those people have bridged the gap between like what's happening in this present physical reality that we live in, but also the spiritual one. So maybe he's just tapped into that, but completely unconsciously. And so he can connect and does connect with spirits everywhere in every house he's in. I don't know. Maybe just
yeah. So there's all kinds. So now it gets back to Sky. So what would you disclose? You can't really disclose this because in the court of law, and I've looked this up, besides the Stambowski v. Ackley, there's really no case law on ghosts, and it never comes down to.
In Henish, you forwarded me the link to that summary opinion, and I took a quick look. And ultimately, what the holding there indicated was specifically the fact that because there was prior publication, in local newspapers, there was quote unquote documentation, there was rumor arguendo out there about the property having a particular stigma. Okay. It was that needed to be disclosed, not so much the fact that it was a ghost, I think. A perfect example, I would say, would be, obviously we know we have to disclose if somebody's died in the property, but do you have to disclose if the property was prior owned by a mass murder? Let's say you want to sell Charles Manson's house.
Yeah, okay? If he didn't murder people on the property, I guess no.
But that would seem to me to be a much stronger basis and position for a buyer later of asserting a claim of non-disclosure than perhaps a ghost.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I'll just tell you what the law says, and it's all codified in Civil Code 1102. Any past, present, known material or significant item affecting the value or desirability of the property. And I think really with this whole ghost thing, what we're talking about is not so much material, because when you're thinking material, you're thinking structural components, right? But desirability. And I think, but same token, desirability is highly, highly subjective.
Yeah,
so,
right. That brings up the big point, right? Because like, if only 45% of people believe in ghosts, well, the other 50% don't. So like having a ghost may or may not have a positive or negative desirability impact, right? If you had if you're an appraiser and said, okay, we got one haunted house and one non-haunted house, what's the adjustment? It could be a net zero.
And at the end of the day, what would I advise my client, either buyer, well, if I was representing a seller who brought this to me, my advice would be whether it would be dependent upon whether or not there was any publication of notoriety. So was the property in Ghost Hunters, or were there articles in the San Diego Reader about that particular property? If that's in fact the case, perhaps what I'd do is I'd add an addendum to an SBQ TDS and include the articles. But I would be hard pressed to advise my client to put down in writing on any of the questions posed in the TDS or SBQ, the house is haunted. I mean, if I was representing a buyer and I read that, I would be more concerned about seller's sanity than I would about whether or not there was a ghost. And maybe that answers your question about my position on the matter, but again.
So it's interesting because Ghost Hunters is on its second decade of airing. Guess how many ghosts they found?
How many?
I missed that one, Henish.
Goose egg, zero. They found zero ghosts. And I remember years ago, I was in LA near the Comedy Store eating tacos late night. And we were talking about ghosts just randomly. This isn't like a favorite topic of mine, but I was just talking about ghosts.
Yes,
and the guy at the next table was like, hey, I can't help it over here, but I'm a cameraman on Ghost Hunters, right? I was like, oh, no way. I was like, what's the skinny? He's like, dude, we can't find any ghosts. It's like, we can't find any ghosts. We're going to the creepiest places we can find. We can't find.
Like the guys that are out looking for Bigfoot, right? He's out there somewhere.
Are there a lot of those people, you think? Well, it just gives me, a topic for a future show because I need to find a Bigfoot hunter now.
Oh, yeah. I don't know about Bigfoot. Bigfoot, but my comment still stands. I would like to be a vampire for at least 2 days. Like, for sure.
So there was another aspect of the property.
Well, I heard they found the Loch Ness Monster in Mission Bay, so I'm having to disclose that on my TDS and SBQ as well.
That's not impossible. I did see some weird stuff one night at a bonfire in Mission Bay, and
no one could prove it wasn't. How did your blood work turn out?
What's that?
How'd your blood work turn out?
We were all there watching. I think it was actually a group of late night dolphins that were out. They were just kind of swimming in formation. That was my only. And anyway, so on the disclosure thing, I have heard also of properties being psychologically impacted or having emotional defects. Have you heard of anything like that?
A property having emotional defects.
Yeah.
Bring me that case. I'm going to pass.
But the thing is, you've been to houses. You're like, this house just feels real sad. You can almost get that energy out of it.
Because the plumbing's old and needs to be replaced. Because the floorboards are sagging. Because the roof is starting to leak. Yeah, right. We can call that emotional, psychological impact on a property, I guess. Okay, but I wouldn't bring it to a judge.
So this brings me back to my original question. If I bring a medium to a house that I'm selling and she discovers something or nothing, do I or do not have to disclose that?
Okay, I'm going to fall back to the general rule of thumb. When in doubt, disclose, disclose, disclose.
Okay.
Skylar, you're so
the buyer's agent / attorney is going to question my sanity after I've done this medium test to see why, if there are friendly, non-friendly, or no ghosts in this house.
If that buyer is represented by Schuyler Hoffman, yes.
Wow. So,
and I'm going to do a lot more due diligence, by the way, on every single structural component. By the way, if it's if the seller discloses the presence of a quote-unquote ghost.
Why do you think that the disclosure of someone passing away in the property is only for the past 3 years? Do people think that the spirits of passed away people don't last longer than 3 years?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it is a bit of an arbitrary date, but the law does not like ambiguities. So while it's arbitrary, at some point a date had to be established, because ultimately, if it was open-ended to the fact where has anybody ever died in the property, right? And if the property's 100 years old, it makes it very, all of a sudden you're on a wild goose chase looking through death certificates to find out who were all the prior owners and did anybody die in the property. It's just not it's not realistic. So while the date itself is a bit arbitrary, the law prefers certainty, and by establishing a three-year period, it applies a certain amount of certainty to that particular provision.
So with the statutes of disclosure changing over the years, and I don't know when it happened, maybe you are, Sky, in terms of when it changed from caveat emptor, which is buyer beware, to, hey, you've got to do full disclosure. When did that change?
Well, hold on. It's not that it ever changed. The Civil Code, 1102 has been around for a while, and there's always been a good faith obligation to disclose, okay? Now, understand as well that all the questions set forth in the TDS and SBQ, you're right, those are constantly being updated by CAR, okay? But at the end of the day, a lot of those disclosures are arbitrary or additional material. All you need to do is provide a TDS. SBQ is not a mandatory disclosure. However, any buyer I represent is going to get an SBQ and liking an addendum to an SBQ and everything else. So really what 1102 implies and obligates is good faith disclosure of known material defects or desirability. And that's been on the book for a long time. The only thing that's really changed is the fact that through CAR forms, we've structured the disclosure process and are constantly updating it with every new CAR form revision.
So it's still buyer beware, but at the end of the day, the seller has to disclose everything they need to know.
Henish, read the fine print, my man, on all those CAR forms. Everywhere it says, and there's all those buyers, what's the buyer inspection advisory? It's pretty much saying, buyer beware, do your own homework.
Yeah, inspect everything. Well, awesome. So I don't know if we've, advanced this issue, but we've learned some things today about ghosts.
I think we solved this issue.
Oh, okay.
Solved.
buy any haunted house you want because it's not provable. Yeah, I mean, people,
just buy it, install cabana doors. Ghosts, I hear, hate cabana doors. A lot of natural light,
Yeah.
Maybe add a pool and a grotto.
Yeah, I know a good construction company, so
there you go.
Exactly. Buy it, rehab it, and then get your sage and your medium in there to get it all, energetically good, and you're good. Buy it.
And then the property's clear, and then if there's still ghosts, it's probably one of your relatives.
Sure. Yeah.
Hanging out, totally. I'd like my mom. I'd love it if my mom spooked me. I'm actually waiting for my mom, because my mom would see ghosts too. I'm actually waiting for my mom to just sneaky come up behind me or touch me or just scare me. I can't wait. I'm actually excited for that. I'm trying to look for it. That's probably why it's not coming. So anyway.
Yeah, you can't find things when you're looking for them, right?
Yeah.
Well, guys, I appreciate your time. That's our episode. So now we know a little bit more about ghosts and real estate law. Thank you, Jesse, and thank you, Sky, for joining me on this episode of I've Got a Theory. That was super fun. We'll have to tune in for the next one.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. Great job, Sky.
Thank you. Henish, appreciate you, my man. Good seeing you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
You rock, Henish. Talk to you later.